Hello,
Internet. How's it going, guys?
Yeah, greetings. So, this is going to be another grinding cast. So, we're not going to have the fish sound on because we want to draw you into the thing we're doing. Or maybe just a tiny bit in the background. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I can turn it up. It's okay.
Let's just have a little bit. Okay, so we're going to be using the set piece of this lovely pink and black koi to read a preview from a book.
Hang on.
Alrighty.
Okay.
So, my name is Liz.
And I am Scandal.
And if you aren't familiar with what a grinding cast is basically we're grinding advancement on a game while we're doing a podcast style show. So the visuals, you can enjoy them if you like, or you can just listen to this like a traditional podcast.
Yep. You can just walk away. It'll just be us playing in the background. It's totally fine. Because the whole point of these grinding casts, we're actually going to do a tiny little series, and then we just got this idea, and I was like, this is brilliant! We need to have reactions to this.
This is going to be great.
We discovered, so there are a couple apps you can get on the App Store, right? Where you can actually download, if you live in the United States and you have a library card, or you can steal a relative's library card. You
borrow.
can borrow.
Just borrow.
I know. I always say steal because it amuses me. But the thing is, so you can borrow somebody's library card, and you can actually, use. What do you think we should go for? I'm trying to say.
All right, don't talk about the game.
But you can.
What it is they're digital library apps.
Mm-hmm.
They're not like Kindle where you buy things. Or they're just renting from the library.
You're borrowing
on your
books
phone.
like you do from a library.
So I was trying to find a book at my library, and I realized as I'm cycling through award-winning juvenile fiction. Oh, sorry, young adults, which is higher than juvenile.
Yep.
Fiction. That they all started sounding the same. I was really disappointed with how much they all started sounding the same. Basically, I could come up with 3 categories. The first one was young girl wish fulfillment. The second one was young boy wish fulfillment. And the third one was edgy angst to win an award. Now, some of those are actually really good books. Okay, so, and those last ones, that last category of, edgy to win an award, these people, a lot of them are very passionate authors, and they're writing very thoughtful things. But the way the person writing the description of their book sounds, they all start to sound the same.
Mm-hmm. It was actually a criticism I had. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of it, but it's called the Dark Angel trilogy. I laughed my rear end off when I actually saw some of the re-releases of the Dark Angel trilogy because it tried to make it sound like it was this edgy, more modern young adult romance. And I was sitting there going, okay, this is about like a 13-year-old girl and a 12-year-old boy,
and he's an angel and a vampire and an angel
and all the art, all the modern art for the re-releases of the paperback have him looking like he's about 17, 18 years old, and I'm going, he's a freaking 12-year-old child.
Anyway, so if we're gonna drive this forward, basically, the way the descriptions of all these books are written, they all start to sound the same. And me, who loves books and stories, and my friend, who also loves books and stories, the frustrating thing is that you can't really tell them apart once you get the descriptions. So what we're going to do is just read some of the actual, sample pieces, because the library offers, sample it before you rent it kind of thing. And so we're going to just do that on each one of these grinding casts. So this will be number 1, and then if you drop in on the other ones, you can just come back here, I guess.
So we've got multiple ones lined up
that we're
here.
Going to do.
Yeah.
Anyway, so right now we're going to be reading a sample from Wonder Show by Hannah Barnaby.
Hang on. Anyway,
so by Hannah Barnaby. All right?
Okay.
So, Wonder Show. You know what? I'm just not even going to read the actual intro, whatever, the book description. I'm
summary.
Just going to read the sample. All right? So, preface. The Banshee of Brewster Falls. Wayward can mean a lot of things. It can mean lost, misled, unfortunate, left behind. That is how the girls... Are we going to be watching ads in the background?
It did its own, don't worry.
Okay, so there's no sound. All right.
Yeah.
We're just collecting pearls, also part of grinding premium currency.
Anyway.
All right, one more time. It can mean a lot of things. Misled, unfortunate, left behind. That's how the girls at the home thought of themselves, despite their best efforts to live some other way. For the inhabitants of Brewster Falls, wayward meant wicked, dangerous, trash, and that is how they treated the girls on the rare occasion they showed their faces in town. Portia was the only one who went on a regular basis. She did the shopping and stopped at the post office for letters and telegrams. She rode the red bicycle and did not cover her long dark hair. and sang old gypsy songs at the top of her
Racism!
lungs.
Okay, also, I have to say, like, I laughed about this. So this is where we initially decided we gotta do this. Because I went, can you imagine these people who have been basically outcast for some reason, long black hair and belting out at the top of her voice while biking around going, love me! You know, it's like, and everyone will get it! And you're just like, why are you doing this? You are everything that's wrong with this world.
I mean, and going, it could be a defiant thing, but singing at the actual top of your lungs
That's
is
really loud.
also challenging.
Yes.
Quite
And also,
challenging.
again, it's not easy to do, and you also sound like an idiot. So I have some experience with this because I sang basically opera growing up. So having someone who's just belting out, who potentially has had no training whatsoever, is probably one of the funniest things. Like, it's also entertaining and also kind of charming sometimes, where you're like, there's just a person having a great time, but you have to socially think of, these are people that people are like, we don't like you.
Well, if that person's an outcast, this is probably a very defiant gesture. The way the hair suggests defiance. However, forgive any cultural or racist slurs. I'm just going to read the book as it was written. All right, gypsy songs at the top of her lungs. And she seemed...
I'm like, there's only one. I kind of just want to release it anyway.
Go for it. Pink is actually a rare color.
Sure.
So
I mean, that's us. But...
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
The pink is what we want.
All right.
All right.
Yes, it's...
Pardon?
Go ahead.
We're gonna learn how to do this in the first round, and the other rounds will be cleaner.
It'll be way better. Anyway.
It'll be better. We'll learn. We're learning anyway. Welcome to Lies Instead of Learning.
This is how we work, dang it. That doesn't matter. There's no learning required. We're just here.
Learning how to perform in YouTube. All right. So, and she seemed, to the residents of Brewster Falls, like a banshee coming to steal their souls. All right, we're right. Untrained vocals.
Shrieking at the top of her lungs.
I love it. I love it.
I love it.
All right.
Anyway.
Mothers would hide their children indoors when Portia came whipping down the road. They were a fearful group of folks.
They also had problems because she literally was part of the reason why they were all outcasts. But, she was too she's too pretty for that. So
she's too self-absorbed.
Absorbed.
She's too trapped in her own angst.
She's too introverted. Sorry.
Anyway, right, I'm hiding under the screaming, which honestly is how a lot of actors do it. So
yeah, absolutely.
We're good. All right, they were a fearful group of folk. Portia loved to torment them because she's a jerk, and she loved the red bicycle. There, bicycles are great. Riding a bicycle was the only kind of freedom for Portia. It was something she thought she'd always known how to do, simply because she couldn't remember couldn't place the first time she'd done it. Like laughing or eating an apple. It was so utterly normal that it didn't even require thought. Settle onto the seat. Push off. Pedal right, left. Hold the handlebars steady. Watch the road ahead to avoid cars and potholes and squirrels. But don't look too hard at anything. She could almost get out of her body, almost pretend she was entirely somewhere else. That was the freedom she loved. That was why she had worked so hard to convince Mr. to let her take the trips to town. Because it afforded her the luxury of time alone on her bicycle. Only it wasn't her bicycle. It was Mister's. It had been his since a Christmas morning once upon a time, when a little boy, who would grow up to be Mister, had tumbled out of bed and found a string tied to his big toe. A string that he untied and followed out of his room, through the upstairs hallways, to the stairs, down the stairs, unwinding it carefully from the banister, through the dining room into the kitchen. Such a long string, and through the side door, which he opened to find a shiny red Journeyman 5-speed leaning against the porch rail. Was he happy? Did he gasp with delight? Or did he stand there with a handful of string and think, they don't know me at all? It hardly matters now. Wow, that was the whole intro. It just cuts off right there. That's the intro.
That was it? Wow.
Let's find a tiny bit about this town. Let's find a tiny bit about this girl and what seems like a very angsty sort of situation.
Okay, now you have to read the summary. So this is
part one. It still goes.
Oh, okay.
But that was the prologue. That was the author's prologue.
Okay.
It hardly matters now how much I think about this man and what this detailed scene from his past might be.
I'm like, that just sounds
Part one.
Angsty and edgy.
These chapters have titles. I actually like chapters with titles rather than 1, 2, 3, 4. So this book is winning points with me in that way.
That's fine.
Begin at the beginning. Stories came easily to Portia. Lies came even more easily. Oh no, I don't. And more often. Apparently I visit her all the time. The difference was in the purpose. The stories taught her to imagine places beyond where she was, and the lies kept her out of trouble. Mostly. Portia's first audience, for lies and stories both, was her father. Her mother had never had the ear for tales of any kind, nor the patience to listen, and she was long gone by the time Portia could tell a tale. A lean, restless woman, Quintilla, surprised, or Quintia? I'll just do Quintia.
Let's do whatever
Portia Quintia surprised no one with her departure, and the family quickly closed the space she had occupied, like the ocean fills a hole in the sand. They did not speak of her. If they ever thought of her, it was in silence, and so it was Max, her father, who listened to Portia talk. Out the door, around the house, all the way to the woodpile, and back, the sound of Portia's voice trailed Max like an echo. She had an uncanny way of matching her rhythms to his, tailoring her stories to his moods and whatever task he worked on.
You mean
while
like
she talked.
Any kid really does copying their parents? I'm sorry, I feel like this person's never been around children before.
Like, this
they really sound like the adults who are around them. So that's one of the things where they talk about going, actually, don't underestimate your kids. Treat them like they're smart. They will then become more capable, more intelligent. They will speak in certain ways. Actually, so it was actually a huge conundrum that happened with the Teletubbies show. Hang on. So when Teletubbies originally aired, there actually was a huge problem with basically
kids imitating the
kids
language.
starting to imitate the language, and they actually talked about basically they started regressing. Like they lost language because they watched it so much, and actually it was the part of a huge issue with adults of going, well, you know, because they were just like, they just get to watch TV. It's harmless kind of thing, but it's also like, that's the same thing that happens around other people. You treat your kid and you speak to them in certain ways, they will just sound like that. And if you don't, they won't sound like that. And going, well, you know, kids are stupid. That's because you haven't educated them. What? They imitate
it does
you.
Really fall on the environment and the ones who support or define the environment around them. At any rate, it is incredibly common for a child to cater to the adult, to either get their attention or to describe what they're seeing in a fairly insightful way. All right, let's see.
So I'm just like, you sound like someone who's never been around kids very much, Arthur.
They were stream of consciousness ramblings at first, retelling of the fairy tales Portia heard from her gypsy tribe of relations, all of whom lived within spitting distance of her bedroom window and congregated nightly in Aunt Carmilla's kitchen, on the other side of the vegetable garden. Portia did not have to leave her room to hear them speaking at night. They knew she was there and projected their voices accordingly. She made the stories...
So basically what you have is relatives yelling at your bedroom window, and the parents are fine with this. This is fine, keep my child up at night. It's okay, it's fine.
The one parent.
Oh, okay, the one parent, because, you know, that
you
was
aren't listening, the one parent, just Max.
I know, because the mom died, because this is this kind of story.
Or left. She made the stories her own, chopped them up and clapped them back together in new formations, putting the enchanted princesses in the loving embrace of a villainous wolf, marrying the charming prince to a wicked witch, and giving them a brood of dwarfs to raise as their own. She sounds like most of the edgelord authors today.
She does.
That's brilliant. I love it. A modern, edgy retelling. A dark fable. Sorry, here we go.
Sure.
See, children are brilliant.
Children
are
are
correct.
Oh gosh, and a shocking surprise.
Sometimes Portia would have so many storied roads in her head that she would struggle to choose just one path. I have that problem as a writer. Papa, she said, I can't tell where this story begins. Begin at the beginning, he told her, because all dads are super level-headed in my mind. These were the earliest days Portia could remember. Later, trying to think past them, to drill into her younger selves and mine them for memories, she could get only as far as the view from that bedroom window. The sound of her shadowed aunts and uncles laughing, telling tales, and singing songs about women Portia knew not to repeat in polite company. These were the days before the money dried up and the dust took over, before the jobs and houses were lost, before her tribe disbanded and went away like seeds on the wind, hoping to find a place where they could land safely. As her family trickled away, Portia replaced the stories they had told with stories of her own. She didn't like the feeling of their words in her mouth anymore. Besides, the details began to fade, and it seemed her father smiled only when she told her own tales. There are creatures that dance outside my window at night, she told him, and they are very fat. They have wings, but they cannot fly because their wings are too small. What do they sound like? Asked Max. Like bees, said Portia.
Bees!
Bees! It's bees! These
Oh
fat
my
little
God.
things walking around,
Beep!
trying so hard to fly and nothing's happening. All right. What do they want? Asked Max. To fly, said Portia. They want to fly more than anything. What are their names? Asked Max. The only names Portia knew were the names of her lost relatives. She had not been to school. She did not have friends or know anyone who was not her family. She was 5 years old. Their names are Carmela, and Joseph, and Anthony, and Oscar, and Elena, and... Then she stopped, because a tear pushed itself out of Max's eye, and the sight of it rolling down her father's face made Portia feel that she had done something very wrong. She whispered. It's not true, said Max. Then why are you sad? Because our family is gone, he said. I don't think they could fly. I didn't think they could fly, but they did. Portia put her hand into her father's coat pocket, where his own hand rested like a nesting bird. They flew away.
So hang on. She spends her time in the beginning singing and yelling all of these Romany stories, right?
Right.
Like, or just basically yelling on her bike these Romany songs.
Right.
So, and then as a child, they're going, well, she actively basically avoided talking about them or doing anything else because they always made everyone else sad. Why the heck would she then continue on singing those stories?
Well, that's the mystery of the book, isn't it?
Or either that or just bad writing.
At this point, I'd give the author,
the benefit of the doubt.
And say that perhaps in this case, something happened between here and there, and she decided to go back to her roots because it pissed people off. Maybe she hates them still, but she's just trying to aggravate people, which she is.
She did
just
actually
trying to
mention
aggravate
that too, yeah.
And using something you hate to piss off other people is usually satisfying.
It's true.
Anyway, if they flew away, they can fly back, she said. Max shrugged. We will fly away too. Of course, Portia thought we included her. She was 5 years old. Circus.
So her dad left her?
It sounds like it. A few weeks after Portia
Who's
turned...
the other we? That makes no sense. We will. Well, we thought it included it.
Well,
I guess it's an
sometimes-
automatic thing that sometimes people say. It's true.
And sometimes you say we and you mean the other person, and then things change.
Right.
A few weeks after Portia turned 9, Max and Aunt Sophia took her to the circus to distract her from the empty houses and the dust and the quiet. It was Max's idea. The circus. But it was Sophia's money that got them in. She grumbled a bit as she handed it over to the beaming woman in the ticket wagon. But even Sophia wasn't immune to the alluring smells of sawdust and pink sugar that hung all around them. Even she had once been a child. Does that mean she's really, really old? Or just very serious?
Even I had once been a child. I mean, it could be that literal teenager thing or that small kid thing that you can really run into going, well, I just know everything.
I don't think Sophia is young at all.
I have no idea. We'll
Aunt
find.
Sophia.
Yeah, probably.
And her money. Usually if you're young and alone, you don't have money. Anyway, they went through the menagerie at first, gaping at elephants and the colossal hippo that bobbed calmly in the huge tank of water. Max moved quickly, wanting to see everything at once, turning occasionally to glance at his daughter behind him. Portia stood next to Sophia, and resisted the urge to grab her hand when one of the elephants extended its trunk in her direction, the fleshy tip trembling as it searched the air. I think it's looking for a kiss, Sophia said, her voice high-pitched, full of forced excitement. Oh, well, I'll try that one again later. It made Portia glad she had kept her hand.
So this
at
is
her
a
sides.
writing 101 thing that some people talk about. While stylistically you can put the actions after, like the descriptors of what they're saying after, it's usually much wiser to do it beforehand because then actually people know what the heck they're reading.
At least when they're first introduced to a character, it's really helpful if you're going to define their voice or their cadence or their bearing before they speak.
Because what the thing is that you're trying to first teach the reader what they're like as a person. And if you put that after the fact, it sounds weird.
It also deeply helps any audiobook reader. It really helps.
Audiobook reader constantly going, ah!
Now that I've got this, it sounds, well, there we go.
It sounds ridiculous.
When they exited the tent at the other end of the menagerie, they found themselves on the midway. There was a long row of booths on each side, selling popcorn and cotton candy, and chances to throw things to win other things. I actually like that sentence. Throw things to win other things. That's charming.
That is kind of charming.
Portia knew better than to ask if she could play one of the games. Max might have relented, but Aunt Sophia was against gambling of any kind and would have spent the rest of the day lecturing Portia on the subject. though it would almost have been a relief to hear Sophia speaking in her normal voice instead of her false, cheery, day at the circus one. Halfway
And
down...
now we have to do this thing, and I hate this thing.
Halfway down the east side of the midway, between the ring toss and the Beano booth, I'm not sure what that is, was a long stage with a squat tent behind it. There was a podium at one end, next to the tent entrance, and a huge sign above the stage that said, Strange People. The crowd was dense. Portia couldn't see the stage, but she could hear the tinny strains of accordion music over the murmuring voices that wove their way back to her. What's that? She asked. Max was silent, and Portia felt chastened. She had been asking too many questions lately, and Max no longer had any answers, or had become like her mother, unwilling to share them. Sophia, who was taller than most of the women in the crowd, and a good number of men, too, looked down at Portia disapprovingly. Nothing that concerns you. Let's go. But what is it? I can't see. A large man next to Sophia leaned down to Portia and said, You can't see? Well, that won't do. Here, let me help. She was small for her age. It took no effort at all for the man to reach down and lift Portia as if she were a bag of groceries, and plunk her onto his shoulders.
Okay, how would you lift it? I picked you up by your dress.
By a handle. Bag of groceries.
I grabbed you by your hair. Yeah, that's
more
what
like sack of flour. You use both arms. I think that would have been better.
Because I'm like a bag of groceries, unless we're making a reference to how you used to pick up groceries, which was you scoop it because you didn't have handles, you know.
Well,
you
box of groceries would have been more accurate then.
Yeah, I'm like that. That seems.
Anyway, that one didn't work for me.
That didn't work for me either. Go ahead.
Let's see. Sophia sputtered a bit, but she lived by good manners above all, and couldn't bring herself to reprimand a total stranger. Portia's newfound height gave her a perfect view, but even though she could see the figure on the stage, she still wasn't sure what she was looking at. It seemed to be a man, but he didn't look like any man Portia has ever seen. His head was very small and bald and rather pointy at the back, and his face seemed too big. It was sloped as though someone had grabbed his nose and pulled everything down toward a nearly absent chin. Accidentally, out loud, Portia said, What is it? It's the pinhead, the man told her. Is he... What's wrong with him? Don't know, said the man, but he sure is funny looking, ain't he? The pinhead smiled peacefully as he played his accordion and gazed down at the stage. He did not look into the audience, and everyone stared and whispered, as if he were on a movie screen instead of right there in front of them. Finally, he finished his song with a little flourish, and still smiling, shuffled off the stage, slipping behind a hidden opening into the tent canvas. Another man stepped up to the podium. I'm surprised at this point that her two guardians haven't done anything.
They're just staring.
A large man, taller than her aunt, who's taller than everyone else, or it's seemingly so.
Oh, so ridiculously much taller than everyone else.
Picked her up and put her on his shoulders, and nobody responded at all. The adults have disappeared.
I was going to say, though, that's actually very common, unfortunately, in a lot of stories, where basically people forget about their other characters. Well, that just happens. It's like basically what you're having is a perspective problem, where it's like, right now, you are not actually just focused on her, or are you? Because if you are, for her, yeah, maybe the other adults disappeared, but the other adults might actually be basically freaking out, going, excuse me.
Well, and the thing is having them gasp slightly or some kind of response from the two of them that have been present, right? Even if they were also that polite, but deep, but uncomfortable kind of thing. But if we're trying to be completely in her perspective, then it's challenging anyway. So, But at any rate, it feels like the other two characters were forgotten.
It kind of does.
Another man stepped up to the podium. He was wearing a white suit, so white in the early afternoon sun that Portia had to shield her eyes to look at him. Ladies and gentlemen, he called.
Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and ladies. Anyway.
Let's hear a big round of applause for Gregor, last surviving member of the lost tribe of Montezuma. There was a smattering of hesitant applause, and the white suit man went on. Now, ladies and gentlemen, our main event. This is what your friends and neighbors will be talking about long after our humble show is gone from your fine town. You will tell your grandchildren the story of this day, and they will scarcely believe you. It is so fantastic. Seeing is believing, but you will not believe your eyes. He paused and put his hand in the air. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Gallery of Human Oddities. Portia looked down at her father, who existed again,
who suddenly was there and stared at his friend called Bob,
to see what he was making of all this. But Max wasn't looking at the stage. Instead, he was staring past one side of it, fixing his eyes on something far away. Sophia tapped Portia's benefactor on the shoulder. Thank you.
Finally.
Finally. Excuse me, sir.
I'm also like, why did you wait that long?
But I think I should take my niece to a more suitable part of the show. Of course, he said. He lifted Portia from around his
yeah,
neck
sure, my mistake. I didn't even bother asking, and now I'm just... Oh, that's annoying. Anyway.
and set her carefully on the ground. But what do you say? Sophia snapped. Thank you, sir, Portia said to the man, and he tipped his hat. Portia jogged to keep up with Sophia. I'm surprised she didn't knock his hat off when she sat on his shoulders.
All right.
But it could be a kind of different
And
kind
also,
of hat.
especially if she's ever done that before. With new kids, they're not typically very good at going, oh, I'm on your shoulders. I will not waggle everywhere and go whack.
Okay. Portia jogged to keep up with Sophia, who was striding swiftly towards the biggest tent on the lot. Max floated distractedly behind them. Why can't we stay and watch? It's not appropriate, Sophia said. What's not appropriate? Portia's mind was swimming with what was she'd seen, what the white suit man could have meant by human oddities, why Aunt Sophia was practically running away from the midway stage. The sideshow, Sophia said. No more questions. There was no better way to ensure Portia's obsession with something than to tell her to forget about it. Now that is accurate to a child.
Mm-hmm.
She was distracted a bit as the circus performance began. Portia had never seen such things outside of her imagination. Girls hanging by their hair and turning somersaults, small, stocky men throwing themselves into the air and catching each other by the wrists, massive tigers obeying the whip-snap commands of the fearless woman who stood inside their cage, girls riding horses, standing up, bears on bicycles, elephants dancing like ballerinas. It was enchanting, like a fairy tale come to life. But for all the whirling colors and motion and noise, all Portia could think about was what she had not been allowed to see. And that night her dreams were filled with new characters. A man with the head of a bear, a woman the size of a zeppelin hovering overhead, an army of accordion-playing pinheads. As she tried to figure out what stories might have been hiding behind the curtains on the midway, just waiting for her. It was barely another week before Max determined that it was time to go. In the years to come, Portia's memories of the circus would become hopelessly tangled with the image of her father driving away, so that it eventually seemed clear to her that Max had gone to follow the circus. His distant silence during their outing became, in Portia's mind, a symptom of deep fascination with the midway, the menagerie, and that mysterious tent she had not been allowed to enter. As actual memories faded, they were replaced by dreamlike pictures of Max as a lion tamer, a roustabout, a ringmaster. Max and the circus were united for good. And then they both vanished. So that is actually the preview of this book.
Okay, so what? Okay, now you got to read the summary.
Okay, now I'm going to read the summary.
Because the summary is the thing that we were laughing our butts off
where
about.
it was just
going,
like,
what?
this sounds so much like so many other things, but trying to be really edgy. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, step inside Moscow's traveling wonder show. A menagerie of human curiosities and misfits guaranteed to astound and amaze. But perhaps the strangest act at Moscow's display is Portia Rimini, a normal among the freaks on the run from McCreevy's home for wayward girls, where Mr. watches and waits. He said he would always find Portia, that she could never leave. Free at last, Portia begins a new life on the Bali.
He said he could never do this thing. Well, she's gone.
It happened.
That took 2 seconds. Goodbye. Bye, bitch.
Portia begins a new life on the Bali, seeking answers about her father's disappearance. Will she find him before Mr. finds her? It's a story for the ages, and like everyone who enters the Wonder Show, Portia will never be the same. So for me, this one was a little bit different than a lot of the other summaries because it doesn't include, here's a boy and another boy and a mysterious romance, what have you.
Right.
So at least that's not there. But in this case, it was very much, here's a circus of freaks, but one normal girl who's there anyway.
One kawaii
having an
desu.
extraordinary experience of something different. Anyway, missing father, all that stuff. But it was frustrating because I've been going through so many of these books trying to find something distinctive. And so many of them sound the same. And you can pick them out so often by their covers as well, which is even worse.
Uh-huh, there's a style to it.
Anyway, so that finishes up this round, where we looked at Wonder Show by Hannah Barnaby.
Right, so thank you for joining us, guys. That was kind of interesting. Actually, so we heard the summary beforehand, so I was actually kind of surprised to go, that isn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. Now, it might get worse, But if you want to go read this book, we recommend again that if you live in the United States and you have a library card, and you can get access to an app,
Called Overdrive.
an app called Overdrive.
Or another library app in your area.
Yep.
Check it out. Or if you have a physical library, go and see.
Yep, you could find out whether or not this book is actually good for you. So anyway, thanks for joining us, guys. I have been Scandal.
And I have always been Lies. Take care of yourselves, and hopefully we will see you soon.
See you guys.
Bye.